Have you ever walked into a room, locked eyes with someone, and instantly felt something was off, but couldn't explain why? That's not your imagination. That's your instinct, your primal intelligence, trying to talk to you. But the problem is, most people have forgotten how to listen to it. They walk through life blindly trusting words, when they should be watching the eyes, the breath, the way someone shifts their weight. What if I told you that you could decode human behavior as easily as flipping a switch by using the animal wheel? When I worked in counterintelligence, I didn't have the luxury of guesswork. Reading people wasn't a nice skill to have. It was survival. And in those high-stakes rooms, the most dangerous person wasn't the one shouting. It was the one smiling too much, blinking too little, hiding behind the mask of charm. And that's where the animal wheel comes in, because everyone you meet operates like an animal in the wild. And the wild doesn't lie. You've got the lion, dominant, direct, intimidating. When a lion walks into the room, you feel them before they speak. They make eye contact like it's a challenge. They're assertive, loud, sometimes aggressive. You don't talk over a lion, they command space. But here's the secret: lions hate vulnerability. They use power as armor. So if you want to read a lion, don't focus on the volume of their voice. Watch how tightly they clench their jaw when someone challenges them. That's fear. That's exposure. And that's your clue. Then there's the fox. Clever, charming, deceptive. The fox smiles often, flatters quickly, mirrors your emotions. They're strategic thinkers. But if you want to see the real fox, catch them when no one's watching. Watch how they treat people they don't need. Their eyes will scan the room, not for connection, but for opportunity. A fox's handshake is warm, but their loyalty is cold. You'll never see their knife until it's already in your back. People are telling you exactly who they are every single day. You're just not paying attention. And that's where most people go wrong. They think reading others is about catching lies or decoding some complicated language. It's not. It's about watching what's already there. Because every time someone walks into a room, their behavior, their presence, their energy, it all communicates. The problem is, most people are too focused on what's being said that they miss what's being shown. Let me make something clear: behavior doesn't lie. A person's tone, their blink rate, their posture, those things are hardwired, and they don't change just because someone wants to come across a certain way. You could be sitting across from someone who says all the right things. I've got your back. I believe in you. I support you. But if their voice cracks, if their smile doesn't reach their eyes, if they can't look you in the face, that's not a miscommunication. That's a message. In the world I come from, words are the least trustworthy source of information. You want truth. Watch how someone acts when they think you're not watching. See how they treat the waiter. Notice how quickly they interrupt when the spotlight isn't on them. Pick up on the shift in tone when the conversation moves from your success to theirs. People leak truth through behavior, and once you know how to pick it up, it's like having a superpower. You've been around lions, foxes, owls, deer, and bears your whole life. You just didn't know how to name them. The animal wheel isn't just some clever metaphor. It's a map, a blueprint of human nature. Once you learn to see those patterns, it changes how you show up in every conversation, every negotiation, every relationship. Because now, you're no longer taking people at face value. You're reading the reality behind the mask. The lion walks in and takes up space like they own it. They speak with authority, they don't wait for permission, and they expect you to fall in line. You feel their presence before they even open their mouth. That's the lion: dominant, powerful, in control. But here's what most people miss. What looks like confidence is often just a well-constructed wall. Lions are loud not because they're strong, but because they're protecting something. Insecurity, fear, the need to never appear weak. And if you're not trained to see past the roar, you'll fall for it. You'll think they're invincible, that they've got it all together. But look closer. Watch their reaction when someone challenges them publicly. Notice the subtle shift in their jaw, the stiffening of the shoulders, the flash of tension in their eyes. That's not strength. That's defense. Lions hate being vulnerable. They built an entire identity around never letting their guard down. I've seen lions in interrogation rooms, COs, agents, criminals. Doesn't matter the setting. When they feel like control is slipping, their behavior changes. They interrupt more. Their tone rises. They'll dominate the conversation just to reassert power. But if you know what you're looking at, you don't respond with intimidation. You don't back down. You study the pressure points. You recognize that what you're dealing with isn't a threat. It's a performance. So when you're dealing with a lion in your life, don't be blinded by the noise. Strength isn't loud. Control isn't about domination. True power is calm, silent, observant. Lions may look like they're running the show, but often, they're just trying to hide what they're afraid someone might see. And when you can see it before they even open their mouth, that's when you have the real power in the room. The fox is the most dangerous person in the room, and not because they're aggressive, but because they're subtle. They smile wide, they compliment often. They know exactly what you want to hear, and they'll serve it up like a 5-course meal. You walk away from a fox thinking, wow, they really get me? No, they don't. They've studied you, and they've given you just enough sugar to get you to lower your guard. Foxes are master manipulators, not through force, but through finesse. They don't raise their voice. They don't push, at least not directly. They use charm as a tool, flattery as a weapon. They mirror your emotions, your body language, your tone, because they want you to feel like you're in sync. But they're not connecting with you. They're collecting from you information, weakness, access. And here's the trap. They're not just convincing, they're likable. That's what makes them so effective. Most people think danger wears a scowl or yells in your face. Not with the fox. The fox plays the long game. You'll find them praising the boss, comforting the team, acting like the peacemaker. But pay close attention when they think no one's watching. How do they treat the people they don't benefit from? The assistant, the security guard, the intern. That's where the mask slips. The fox doesn't play fair. They play to win. I've seen foxes in high-level negotiations, in leadership roles, even in friendships. They'll smile in your face while planning their next move behind your back. So how do you spot them? Watch for inconsistencies. One moment they're your biggest supporter, the next they're silent when you're under fire. They don't commit. They position. They don't confront. They redirect. And when the stakes are high, they'll disappear, leaving you holding the fallout. Reading a fox means you stop being hypnotized by charm and start tracking behavior. Authentic people don't need to constantly validate you. Real allies don't need to be everywhere, doing everything, pleasing everyone. If someone's always saying the right thing but never really showing up when it counts, you're not dealing with a friend. You're dealing with a fox. And once you see it, you never unsee it. The owl is the quiet one in the room, the one most people underestimate. And that's their power. They don't interrupt. They don't compete for attention. They don't speak just to fill silence. And because of that, people assume they're passive or disconnected. Big mistake. Owls are always watching. They're calculating, storing information, analyzing every word, every reaction, every shift in body language. You might think they're not paying attention, but trust me, they haven't missed a thing. In the world I operated in, silence was never weakness. It was strategy, and owls are masters of that. They let others speak first because it gives them an advantage. While everyone else rushes to prove themselves, the owl is identifying patterns. They can tell you who's insecure, who's bluffing, who's genuine, and they can do it without asking a single question. That kind of insight comes from restraint, not reaction. You want to read an owl. Don't focus on what they say. Focus on what breaks their calm. That's the giveaway. Owls don't show emotion easily, so when you see a flicker, tension in the brow, a shift in breathing, a glance that lingers a second too long, that's your opening. That's where the truth lies. They may be composed on the surface, but that micro-expression, that hesitation, tells you exactly what's going on beneath. And if you try to rattle them, good luck. Owls don't bite on bait. They won't jump into emotional arguments or react impulsively. They'll stay quiet, observe your intent, and only speak when their words will land like a bullet. That's what makes them dangerous in the best way. They don't waste energy. When they finally speak, it's not to please, it's to impact. Most people overlook the owl because they're not flashy. But in high-stakes situations, I trusted the owls, not because they said much, but because when they did, they were never wrong. Reading an O means watching for the subtle tells. Respect the silence, because the most powerful person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who sees everything and says nothing until it matters. The deer is gentle, approachable, kind, and constantly underestimated. They're the ones who nod in agreement even when they're uncomfortable. They say yes when they mean no. They apologize when they've done nothing wrong. You'll see them in every workplace, every relationship, every social circle. The peacemakers, the helpers, the ones who absorb tension just to keep others happy. But here's the true thing behind that soft smile is someone who's constantly on edge, scanning the environment for any sign of disapproval or conflict. Deers don't want to cause problems, they want to avoid them. And that's exactly what makes them vulnerable. They'll bend over backward to keep the peace, even if it means betraying their own needs. They're agreeable to a fault. And while most people interpret that as kindness, what you're actually looking at is fear. Fear of being disliked, fear of confrontation, fear of being seen as difficult. That's what drives their behavior. But you can't rely on a deer's words to understand how they really feel. You've got to watch their body language. They'll say, "I'm fine," but their voice will tighten. They'll laugh at a joke that cuts deep. They'll agree to plans that drain them. Their feet will subtly angle toward the exit. Their eyes will flicker with hesitation. They don't speak with their mouth. They speak with discomfort. In high-pressure environments, deers often retreat. Not because they're weak, but because they're overwhelmed. They absorb stress like a sponge. They want everyone else to feel okay, even if it costs them everything. And if you're not careful, you'll miss their silent suffering. You'll push them too far, and by the time you realize it, they've already checked out emotionally, or disappeared completely. If you want to read a deer, slow down. Ask questions that go beyond surface level. Don't just listen to what they say, watch how they say it. Respect their hesitations, because inside every deer is a person screaming to be heard, but too afraid to speak too loud. And when you learn to recognize that fear, to see it not as fragility but as protection, you stop mistaking kindness for weakness. You start seeing the strength it takes to be gentle in a world that rewards aggression. The bear is quiet, steady, and doesn't need to be in the spotlight. You won't always notice them right away, but you'll feel their presence once you're paying attention. They're the ones who don't speak unless it matters, who don't waste energy on drama or noise. And that's what throws people off. Because we're conditioned to look for charisma, for flash, for volume. But bears don't move fast unless they have to. They conserve their energy for what counts. And when they do move, you feel it. Not because they're trying to dominate, but because they don't waste their power proving themselves. They are power. Bears are cautious, but not weak. They're slow to trust, and that's intentional. They're not interested in quick connections or superficial charm. They're scanning you, studying your consistency. They're not impressed by what you say once. They're watching who you are over time. And if you push too fast, you'll meet their silence. That's not coldness. It's protection. You have to earn your way in with a bear. You have to show you're steady, reliable, real. Because bears don't offer loyalty easily. But once they do, it's ironclad. People often misread bears because we live in a world addicted to speed. Quick friendships, instant validation, fast reactions. Bears don't operate that way. They don't spill their life story in the first conversation. They don't need to be understood by everyone, and they're not afraid to stand apart. That kind of self-containment. That's strength. That's the kind of person you want in your corner. Not the one who's loud when it's easy, but the one who's present when it's hard. If you really want to read a bear, don't just focus on how they treat you. Watch how they respond when someone else is hurting. Bears are protectors by nature. When they sense vulnerability in someone they care about, they step up without needing recognition. They'll check in quietly. They'll sit next to you in silence just so you don't feel alone. They won't post it. They won't brag about it. They just do it. That's who they are. But there's another side to the bear, one most people don't talk about. Because when a bear has been hurt, betrayed, or disrespected, that's when you see their boundaries locked down like steel doors. They don't explode. They withdraw. And that's more permanent than anger. If you break a bear's trust, they won't announce it. They'll just remove themselves, emotionally, physically, energetically, and there's rarely a way back in. Not because they're unforgiving, but because they protect their peace above everything. I've seen this in leadership roles, in relationships, in negotiations. The bear will give you patience, grace, and space, but they're always watching, not to catch you slipping, but to understand whether you're safe. Safe to trust. Safe to be vulnerable with. Safe to invest in. And if you're inconsistent, dishonest, manipulative, they'll shut the door quietly, and you won't even hear the lock click. Bears value authenticity over perfection. You don't need to be flawless with them. You just need to be honest. They'll forgive mistakes. They'll tolerate imperfection. What they won't accept is fake. If you say you're one thing but show up as something else, they'll notice. If you try to charm them instead of being real with them, you've already lost. Bears respect people who can own their flaws and still show up with integrity. That's what earns their trust. And their trust is worth more than 1,000 superficial connections. Now here's where people get blindsided. They assume the bear's calm means they won't push back. But if you corner a bear, if you keep testing their limits, taking their loyalty for granted, they will react. And when they do, it's deliberate, it's grounded, and it's final. Bears don't argue just to argue. If they're confronting you, they've already thought about it. They've already given you chances. So when they draw the line, it's not a threat, it's a boundary. And you'd better believe it holds. In high-stress environments, the bear is the one who keeps the team steady. They don't crumble under pressure, they anchor. But you have to recognize the cost of that strength. Bears often carry more than they should. They pick up other people's weight. They stay calm so others can fall apart. And over time, that wears on them. You might not see it because they won't complain. But it's there. You'll notice it in the way they get quieter, in the way they pull back from things they used to care about. That's not apathy. That's burnout. So if you have a bear in your life, someone who's always been there, always steady, always reliable, don't make the mistake of thinking they don't need support. They do. They just won't ask for it. And if you learn to read the signs, the silence, the slight withdrawal, the sudden need for space, that's your signal. Check in. Not with noise, not with drama, with presence, with patience. That's what speaks to a bear. And if you are the bear, you've probably learned to wear strength like armor. You've been the one holding it together while others unravel. You've kept your emotions locked down because you didn't have the luxury of falling apart. But you need to hear this. Your strength isn't in how much you carry alone. It's in knowing when to ask for support. It's in setting boundaries that protect you, not just everyone else. You don't have to explain your silence, but don't let your silence become isolation. The world needs your steadiness, but you need care too. When you know how to read a bear, you stop mistaking their quiet for indifference. You see the weight they carry, the loyalty they offer, the way they protect without needing to be seen, and when you learn to earn a bear's trust, you gain something rare. Someone who will stand beside you even when the room goes dark. That's not just strength. That's character. That's real power. And in a world full of noise and performance, that kind of grounded presence is what sets people apart. Not just in the way they lead, but in the way they live. Your instinct is your first line of defense. It's your most ancient, most accurate tool. And yet, it's the one most people ignore. We're taught to rationalize everything, to wait for evidence, to give the benefit of the doubt. But instincts don't wait. They don't ask for permission. They react. They speak before logic kicks in, before social filters take over. And when something feels off, when your gut tightens, when your skin crawls, when the hair on your neck stands up, it's not a coincidence. It's not paranoia. It's a warning. I've sat across from people who were trained to lie, trained to manipulate, trained to blend in. And even in rooms full of smiles and perfect manners, there was always a moment, just a moment, when something inside me said, "Watch this one." It wasn't what they said. It wasn't even what they did. It was something deeper. A stillness that was too calculated. A gaze that lasted a beat too long. An energy that didn't match the words. And every time I ignored that instinct, I paid the price. The problem is we've been conditioned to suppress that internal alarm. to be polite, to be rational. We tell ourselves we're overthinking it, that we shouldn't judge. That maybe we're the problem. But instincts aren't emotional, they're biological. They're your nervous system responding to data your conscious mind hasn't processed yet. It's not judgment, it's detection. And when you start tuning into that internal signal, you stop getting played. You don't need to explain your discomfort to anyone. You don't need to justify why someone gives you a bad feeling. You don't need proof to walk away. Your body is picking up on micro-expressions, tone shifts, breathing patterns, things you don't consciously register, but your brain is processing at high speed. That's not weakness. That's intelligence. Your instinct doesn't care about being liked. It cares about being safe, and the people who manipulate, who deceive, who hide behind masks, they rely on your silence. They rely on your hesitation to trust your gut. They know how to fake charm, how to say the right things, but they can't fake energy. They can't fake the ripple their presence sends through a room. And when you're trained to feel that shift, to trust that subtle cue, you stop needing people to tell you who they are. You already know. This isn't about fear. It's about awareness. It's about walking into every room with your eyes open and your instincts sharpened. It's about making decisions not just with your logic, but with your entire intelligence. Emotional, physical, psychological. Because real strength isn't just knowing who others are. It's knowing how to listen when your own body is trying to protect you. And once you start honoring that instinct, you become almost impossible to deceive. One of the most powerful things you can do when it comes to reading people is to wait. Observe before you engage. Most people rush in. They talk too much, reveal too quickly, assume too fast. They walk into a room and want to prove themselves, to connect, to impress. True strength. But when you're busy trying to be seen, you miss what's really happening around you. The smartest person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who's quiet enough to notice everything. When I worked undercover, I never walked into a situation ready to speak. I walked in ready to watch. Every movement, every glance, every subtle pause. It tells you something. People don't realize how much they're leaking when they think no one is watching. You'll see who commands attention and who pretends to. You'll see who dominates out of fear and who steps back out of control. That kind of information doesn't come from listening to what people say. It comes from what they do before they think you're paying attention. Most people are revealing who they are long before you ever say a word to them. But if you jump in too fast, start talking, explaining, trying to connect, you cloud your perception. You start responding instead of observing. And in that rush, you miss the truth. You give up your position before you even understand theirs. That's not strength. That's exposure. When you observe first, you give yourself the upper hand. You let people reveal themselves on their own terms, because they always will. The lion will try to dominate the room. The fox will charm and redirect. The owl will sit silently and absorb. The deer will try to please everyone. And the bear will stay steady, slow to engage. But if you're not watching, you won't catch it. You'll be too caught up in your own performance to recognize theirs. Silence is your weapon. Observation is your strategy. Let others fill the space. Let them talk. Let them try to impress you. While they're doing that, you're reading. You're analyzing patterns, noticing shifts, cataloging behavior. That's how intelligence works in real time. That's how trust is earned. And how deception is caught. So the next time you walk into a room, don't feel the need to speak first. Watch who interrupts and who stays quiet. Watch whose words match their energy, and whose don't. Watch who looks at you and who looks through you. That 5 minutes of observation will tell you more than an hour of conversation ever will. Because when you learn to read first and speak second, you stop reacting and start leading. The truth is, words are easy to control, but the body always tells on you. People rehearse what they're going to say. They plan their stories, their compliments, their excuses. But no one rehearses how they blink. No one prepares how their feet will point, or whether their jaw will clench when a topic hits too close. That's why nonverbal cues are louder than any sentence you'll ever hear. They don't just give you clues. They expose the real story. In interrogation rooms, I learned early on that if I focused only on the words, I'd miss everything. The key was in the breathing that suddenly changed when a name was mentioned. The hesitation before an answer that sounded too perfect. The micro-expression. A flicker of contempt, a half-second of fear, a forced smile that didn't reach the eyes. And once you learn to see that, you stop asking the wrong questions. You already know the answers before they say a word. People think communication is 90% verbal. It's not. It's physical, it's vocal tone, it's rhythm. When someone's lying, their voice may crack. Their pace might shift. Their pitch may rise slightly because their stress response is activating. Their hands might touch their face, or their blink rate might increase as their brain races to maintain the lie. These are the giveaways. You're not reading their words. You're reading their stress. Even in everyday life, these signals show up constantly. You ask someone how they're doing, and they say, "I'm fine," but their body turns away, their arms cross, their shoulders tense. That's not fine. That's self-protection. That's someone who's emotionally retreating while verbally pretending. Or maybe you're in a meeting and someone's nodding in agreement, but their foot is tapping, their jaw is tight, their posture is pulled back, their body is screaming discomfort, even if their voice is calm. That contradiction is where the truth lies. And once you train yourself to spot those inconsistencies, your relationships change. You stop being fooled by charm. You stop being manipulated by pretty words. You begin to recognize when someone's energy doesn't match their message. Because here's the thing, when someone is honest, their entire body is congruent. The voice matches the eyes. The posture is open, the gestures align with what's being said. But when someone is hiding something, there's always a disconnect. You can feel it. If you're paying attention, so the next time you're unsure about someone, stop replaying what they said. Replay what you saw. Did their breath hitch? Did they fidget? Did they touch their neck when they told you, "Everything's good"? These aren't random movements. They're red flags. Your body knows what's real long before your mind can make sense of it. This isn't about becoming paranoid. It's about becoming informed. It's about collecting the whole picture, not just the polished one they give you. Words can be rehearsed. But the body always tells the truth. You just have to be trained enough to see it. The moment you can name what you're seeing, lion, fox, owl, deer, bear, you stop being caught off guard by behavior that used to confuse or overwhelm you. That's the real advantage. You're not judging people. You're decoding them. You're seeing the blueprint behind the actions. And when you understand the blueprint, you stop taking things personally. You stop wasting time. You stop giving access to people who haven't earned it. Because when you know someone's operating from a lion mindset, you expect the dominance, the control, the push. You don't shrink. You anchor. You know they're not trying to destroy you. They're trying to protect themselves from being exposed. And you don't need to fight that. You manage it. You lead it. You influence it. That's emotional intelligence on a tactical level. When you spot the fox, you're no longer flattered by their charm or fooled by their presence. You track patterns, not promises. You notice how they vanish when the spotlight shifts, how they shift shape depending on who they're talking to. You don't call them out. You just stop depending on them. That's how you protect your peace. That's how you stop being manipulated. The owl. You don't push them for answers. You give them space. You wait, because you know when they speak, it's worth hearing. And their silence, that's not avoidance, it's data collection. You let them take their time, because when they finally talk, they'll cut straight through the noise with clarity you didn't even see coming. You see the deer in a meeting or a relationship, and instead of being frustrated with their indecision, you recognize the fear behind it. You slow down. You invite safety. You let them know they don't need to agree just to be accepted. That builds trust. And once a deer trusts you, you've got an ally who's deeply loyal and emotionally aware. And the bear, you understand they won't rush into connection. That their silence doesn't mean disinterest. It means they're watching, they're measuring. And if you earn their trust, it will be unshakable. But you also know not to take their calm for granted, because once they shut down, they're gone. Bears don't threaten. They decide. And when they decide they're done, it's final. See, this is how you shift from being reactive to being strategic. You stop needing to control every room, every person, every outcome. You simply walk in, assess who's who, and navigate accordingly. not with force, with precision. Because the more you understand the psychology behind behavior, the less you rely on guesswork. You stop over-explaining, over-sharing, overcompensating. You see what's in front of you and adjust your energy to match the reality, not the illusion. This is how you lead. This is how you build stronger teams, safer relationships, and smarter decisions. You stop demanding people change, and instead, you change how you show up based on who's standing in front of you. That's not manipulation. That's mastery. That's knowing yourself so well that you don't get thrown by other people's chaos. You recognize the animal, you understand the instinct, and you respond from a place of strength instead of emotion. That's how you stop being surprised. That's how you start owning every room you walk into, because when you read people correctly, you stop reacting, and you start directing. You don't chase power, you become it. So now you know. The world isn't chaotic when you understand how to see it clearly. People aren't unpredictable when you learn to read them through instinct, through energy, through patterns that never lie. Lions, foxes, owls, deer, bears. They're all around you, revealing themselves in every conversation, every interaction, every pause, and every glance. The power isn't in changing them. The power is in recognizing who they are, adjusting how you respond, and protecting what matters most. Your peace, your purpose, and your presence. This isn't just about reading others. It's about mastering yourself. When you stop reacting emotionally and start responding intelligently, everything changes. You build better relationships. You protect yourself from deception. You step into rooms prepared, clear, and composed. Because you're no longer guessing. You're observing. You're interpreting. You're leading with precision. And that's what separates the powerful from the easily influenced. The ability to read between the lines, behind the smiles, beyond the noise. This is how you rise, this is how you lead, this is how you win. By learning to read people not with judgment, but with clarity. That's the difference between getting played and staying in control. That's the edge, and now, that edge belongs to you.